Toxic positivity is a phrase that's been tossed around in the online bookish community a lot lately. There's this idea that no matter how poorly written a book is, readers will still find a reason to rate it 5 stars or just not rate it at all. There's also this sentiment that, at the end of the day, a human being wrote this book. A person spent hours, days, weeks, months, even years sometimes on this piece of art just for you to finish reading it in 8 hours and then call it trash on the internet. That's mean. But here's the thing. Hating books is generally a positive thing. My name is Joanna Kimber. I'm an indie author, asterisk on the indie. And this is my argument for why we should all hate books more. On a micro level, ratings help other readers in your community know what you think is worth reading or not. If someone has similar taste as you and you rate a book 5 stars, they are more likely to pick that book up than if the book had no ratings at all. Or on the opposite end, if you know that you have the same taste as someone and they rate a book low or do not finish it, you might be a little bit more wary about how you would enjoy reading that book. Even for just the general reader, not in a community, if a book is rated on average 3.5 or more stars, you kind of expect this baseline of quality from that book. On a macro level, it tells publishers what's popular, which authors are doing well, which books are doing well, what's trending. And for authors, it provides social proof, When you see a book with over 10,000 reviews, you know that book hit multiple bestseller lists and did really, really well when it came out. But even for books that have at least 20 reviews, that provides some kind of credit to the author to say, hey, other people have taken a chance on my work, you should too. And to be honest, they say about 10% of people who read a book will leave a rating or review. So even 10 or 20 reviews on a book makes a huge difference. But there's this idea that lower ratings hurts an author's career. And while yes, if your book is rated 1 star or 2 star across many reviews, that will indicate to a reader that your book is not good. And to that I say, so what? It's not the reader's job to make you look better because you wrote a shitty novel. I'm saying this as an author, right? Some authors are not writing good books, and it's okay to say that. It is the writer's job to make sure they are good at writing if they intend to have a career as a writer. I think this goes hand in hand with the whole books are bad nowadays discussion, because reviews are not for authors, right? But if any of my books start to average less than 3 stars to the point where the entire book's rating overall is dropping below that 3.5 baseline, I would want to know what readers are saying that's causing them to feel so negatively about my book. And while I feel that most negative reviews are not critiques, I do think that when there's a trend, that's different. And I think every author knows that you are going to get at least a couple 1 or 2 star reviews, because not everyone is going to get it. Not everyone is going to like it. And this is why I think it's so important to continue being an avid reader, not just because when you read more, you write better, but because there are going to be books that you as an author don't finish. There are going to be books that you as an author do not like. And that makes the sting a little less of a burn when you see someone rating your book lowly, because it's like, well, there are a ton of popular books that I would rate 1 or 2 star reviews, to be honest. And sometimes the 1 or 2 star reviews do not indicate that your book is poorly written, but more so that that person just didn't like it. And there's a huge difference. I think 5 stars should be hard to get to. 5 stars means absolute perfection. There's nothing I would change about the book. There's no more that I ask for from the book. It was completely satisfactory from cover to cover. That is 5 stars to me. A perfect read. I think the problem we're seeing is that people are thinking that anything lower than 4 stars even is a negative review. And I'm not sure when 3 stars became a harsh rating, but 3 stars is not bad. We've gotten to this point where basically when you rate something less than 4 stars, it feels like you're saying the book isn't worth reading, which is not true. 3 stars is average. 3 stars is still satisfactory. It's not perfect. It may not be exceptional even, but it's probably still entertaining. It's probably still ambitious. It might still make you laugh. It might be relevant, and it might be a 3 star to you, but to the person you recommended it to, it might be a 5 star read. And I don't really give star ratings even if I do like or love the book, because I don't know. I've gotten to this point in my reading journey where starred ratings just don't cover how I feel about a book anymore. And each book is not judged equally. Like, I would not judge a fun, erotic novella the same way I would judge like a very critically acclaimed, award-winning literary fiction novel. You know what I mean? The problem is when you come across people who are like, yeah, I know it was bad, but I just turned my brain off because the spice was really good. I turned my brain off so I could enjoy it without having to consider all the grammatical errors and lack of continuity and bad character development, juvenile writing. I do understand what the girlies are saying when it comes to that. And I do think authors have a part to play in this. Indie authors, especially, because we are the ones who are most interactive in the online space, especially with readers, because we kind of have to. That's how we get our names out there, kind of. There is more of a chance of you interacting with me on a normal day versus interacting with like a really successful traditionally published author. But also, we've seen time and time again where people come out saying that like there's this author that they are doing an advanced review for before the book comes out, and that author is requesting that their ARC readers not leave any negative reviews or not leave anything under a 3 star until weeks after the book is already out, so not to hurt their release day. I think that is crazy. That is insane. Well, I do think authors should set boundaries and expectations when it comes to advanced reader copies. I think that the line should be drawn when they are telling you how or what you should rate or review their book. I mean, I feel like 100 honest reviews are more valuable than 100 fake reviews. Honestly, 5-star, 4-star reviews don't always guarantee a sale, because if you rate a book that I think is trash 4 or 5 stars, I will probably never take another book review from you seriously ever again, because clearly our tastes are misaligned. Similarly, if you rate a book I think is absolutely wonderful lower than 3 stars, I also probably will never take a recommendation from you, because again, our tastes are clearly misaligned. So for example, if I see like a romance novel, right? And I check the reviews before buying, and I see a 2-star review, and the 2-star review is something along the lines of, I just couldn't handle it. It was too slow burn. I love a slow burn. That would actually encourage me to purchase a book more than if they had not reviewed at all or left a fake high review. Now, for marginalized authors, there is another layer, because when you are writing books that also comment on the socio-political economic state of the world that we live in, and you are coming from the perspective of a marginalized person, which means that you are probably critiquing a lot of the systems and privileges that exist. You tend to get people who are outside of that group who might be uncomfortable with what you're talking about, rating your book lowly because they can't relate or it's too woke or whatever bullshit they want to put in their review, right? So you do have readers who will see that and who will round their review up to offset that. But honestly, I've never seen an author ask for that, unless that author is being like literally review bombed and harassed and they're telling their audience like, yo, I'm being review bombed and harassed, which also happens. I've never seen an author ask for that to happen, but I do see people who will really feel like a book is 2.5 stars, but they'll rate it 3 stars, or 3.5 stars, but they'll round up to 4 stars. And of course, there are definitely times when a 3.5 is closer to a 4 than it is a 3. But if I know that this author is gonna see this video maybe, or their fans are gonna see this video, just to subvert the onslaught of negative attention I might get for critiquing this book or negatively reviewing this book in this public space, I might just round it up anyway just to avoid that. You know what I mean? And it low-key sucks because a diversity of thought is always going to be a good thing. And again, authors, we know that not everybody is going to like the book, but at the end of the day, if you put something that you are genuinely proud of out there, then no amount of negative reviews, unless, again, this is the caveat, unless it's a trend of negative reviews, then you might want to, take another look at the manuscript. But if you are genuinely proud of what you put out there, a couple 1 or 2 star reviews shouldn't really bother you that much. When I put something out, I try to make it the best thing I ever wrote ever, right? I come across a review that is like 2 stars. I simply disagree with you. And that's it. I simply disagree that this book is 2 stars. And that's it. And like I said, I also know that 2-star review might actually help someone make a decision to try the book. But ratings, for the most part, do not indicate the actual quality of a book. A lot of my favorite novels have an average of 3.5 stars on Goodreads or wherever. It doesn't change the fact that I think it was wonderful and had a great time reading it and would recommend it to anyone who asked me for a recommendation. And I'm not sure why we have this kind of attitude in the book space, because people unironically love bad movies all the time. Like, there are people who have bad movie watch parties with their friends and they will acknowledge that, yeah, this movie is poorly written and the acting is horrible and the writing is terrible and the cinematography is trash, but I love it. It gives me comfort and I will watch it over and over and over again. In the book community, it's almost as if you speak negatively about a book or you acknowledge that a book is poorly written or whatever, you are attacking the author or you're calling other readers stupid or whatever. And it's funny because of that attitude, I think we're actually seeing an overcorrection now where we have people who are being extremely inflammatory and exaggerated in their negative reviews. I think one, to drum up engagement, right? As it's kind of like a form of rage bait, but also to be contrarian, because if a book is extremely popular, you're the odd one out, telling that author to throw their keyboard away and stop writing and never publish anything again. You know that's going to get you a lot of views and comments. It's like the answer to, okay, well, you guys are going to be toxically positive and not be honest about these terrible books. I'm going to be the correction and I'm going to let everyone know that this book truly sucks in the worst, loudest way possible. But here's the thing. sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes the overcorrection makes you actually look silly because sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes the plot holes that you say are plot holes are not actually plot holes. Sometimes the style is actually a style and you just don't like it, which is fine. But does that really mean the author should never write anything ever again? Does that mean the author has no talent? I mean, if all these other people like it, they like it for a reason. Everybody is not lying. Sure, some people are being nicer. Some people are, following a trend or whatever, but not everybody who likes the book is lying that they like the book. And that's okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't leave the negative review, right? I just spent the last, according to the camera, 24 minutes talking about why negative reviews are actually a positive thing. The way I'll go about it, because a critical review is not always a critique, right? To critique something, you actually have to know how to create it. So if you can tell me you didn't like the book, obviously you know what you like and don't like, right? But you can't necessarily tell me the elements of the book that made it bad for you. That's not a critique, babe. And when you get online shouting into the algorithm about how horrible a book is and why the author should stop writing and all these things and how the book is trash, and then you don't list any actual reasons why, and someone comments saying like, oh, I think this is just mean and unnecessary, you are 100% entitled to your opinion. 100%. You are not wrong for speaking how you feel about the book. But that person saying that you are mean and that they think that your review was unnecessary is also 100% entitled to their opinion. And if that's how they feel about your review, I don't think that you should necessarily get upset about that. And what you end up seeing is that person being called anti-intellectual because they're discouraging you from leaving a negative review. However, again, that's not necessarily how anti-intellectualism works, because you didn't really talk about any of the elements that you think actually made the book bad. I think the issue is one person made a video about anti-intellectualism in the book community, and everybody just co-opted that word without knowing what it truly means. To be an anti-intellectual is to be opposing or hostile towards towards intellectuals or an intellectual approach. This usually shows up in the systemic undermining of scientific-based facts. For example, Robert Downey Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that's his name, right? The lizard brain man, getting up and telling everybody that Tylenol causes autism. That is anti-intellectualism. Someone calling you out for being mean in a review that you actually did not discuss the book in any kind of intellectual context or the actual things in a book that make it objectively good or bad, is not them being anti-intellectual. And I think what's happening, and this is not only in the bookish space, but across the internet as a whole, is nobody actually wants to have a conversation. Nobody actually wants to engage in a discussion or even a debate. Everyone wants to be correct, and no one wants to interact with the idea of being wrong about anything. So what you have is when people do engage with your critical review and you disagree with them, if you've already made up in your mind that you are 100% correct and there is no room for error or misunderstanding on your part, then everybody is just yelling at each other and everyone is just calling each other names and everyone thinks everyone else is stupid and everyone thinks they are the smartest person in the room who knows everything. That's a vibe that that's how it can feel like sometimes interacting online. I actually have an example of a book that this happened to. Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. Now, this book is very dark. You can tell by the cover that this book is not going to be sunshine and roses, right? In the synopsis, it talks about the main character being engaged to a handsome blue blood fiance. Now, when I picked this book up in the store and I read that, it was years ago now, but when I read that, immediately I understood that there was going to be some Anglo-Saxon foolishness happening in this book. The very origin of the term blue blood indicates racism, epigenetics, old money. Now, there's a video that kind of blew up where the creator was calling out all the racism and harmful depictions of body image and eating disorders and how problematic the characters were. Baby, that was the point. That was the entire point of the book. And my issue with her video at the time that I saw it, having read the book and knowing what the author was doing, the things she claimed had no purpose absolutely had a purpose. The main character of this book was not someone that you should have been rooting for. You should not like the main character of this book. This main character, Tiffany, she is a bitch from page 1, paragraph 1. And this is gonna tie into my next point. Just bear with me. I think the problem the creator had was that because this main character was a victim of something extremely violent and traumatic, and also, I don't want to spoil it, even though this book is like years and years and years old now and there's a movie out. The main character been through some shit, right? And that's why she is the way she is. And I'm not talking about run-of-the-mill everyday shit that all women experience. I mean some horrible shit. And that's kind of the way she is, and her entire life has been this revenge plot against the people who have wronged her. She is determined to become everything people bullied her for not being in high school. Hence the handsome blue blood fiance and Anglo-Saxon foolishness. So when the creator of the video made it seem as though the very horrible, violent things that happened to this girl in high school were completely unrelated to the growth of the character, when that is literally the basis of who the main character is in the day and age of the book, this was my reaction. In the video, she was literally calling for the cancellation of the author for depicting these things in the book. And again, I think the problem is that the creator had a hard time as seeing the main character as someone that you should not like, someone that you should not root for, because the main character is white, skinny, and brunette. And those characters are not typically the villains of a story. But in my opinion, it should be pretty easy for anyone reading the book to realize that the main character was not a good person. Again, bitch, page 1, paragraph 1. And this is not in a defense of the author, right? This is just a pure example of how sometimes you think you're eating a review when really, baby, you just didn't get it. So to summarize my last one, because I feel like that was kind of all over the place. Yes, the main character of this book was not a good person. Yes, she was racist and she was trying to marry into an even more racist family. Yes, she was classist because it was ingrained in her from a very, very, very young age. Yes, she has a lot of trauma, and that trauma drives majority of her decisions. Yes, she is problematic from, again, page 1, paragraph 1. What that is literally the entire point of the book. Now, if you ask me for my critique of this book, what I would say is that there should have been at least one redeemable character in the story. Every single character in the story did not need to be reprehensible. It would have actually added to the quality of the story if there was a genuinely good character that is a foil to the other characters, right? To avoid spoiling, I won't give much detail, but the final straw for the main character in the end to wrap everything up was not that big of a deal. Like, it was based on the things that she had put up with the entire book. That was not enough for her to have made the decision that she did in the end. It just was not very impactful. To me, it was anticlimactic, and I actually think the movie handled it much better. I would also say there were not trigger warnings in the front of the book, and describing what she went through as something painful and private, girl, that was not enough of a warning for the things that happen on page in this book, okay? This book is dark. Like, this book is not supposed to be some happy-go-lucky story that is wrapped up in a cute little bow by the end. What that taught me, actually, as a reader, is to not take everyone's critical review at face value, because you would be surprised at the comments of that video. There were so many people who were saying that they would never read from that author. That author is now going on their do not buy list. They can't believe this. How does she have a publishing deal? Girl. And as someone who read the book, I was like, how many times have I done that? How many times have I seen a video talking about how an author is XYZ and how a book is XYZ, and I just took that as face value and never read the book for myself to find out? Okay, and that actually wraps my point up nicely. Not every critical review is a critique, and you should always read books for yourself if you truly want to know if a book is good or not. Being able to critique literature is actually a skill. Don't just assume that an author made choices for no reason or is completely obtuse and doesn't realize what they're doing or saying. Assume first that the author put that in their book for a reason, and ask yourself what the reason is. Then actually try to find the reason in the story. How did this affect the characters? How did this affect the plot? How did this change things in the story? How did it change the outcome? Yes, it's a decision that the character made you may not like, but considering what the character is going through and has gone through in the past and wants for their future, is this something that is realistic to what that character might do should that character actually be in real life and not in a fictional story where you want everything to be perfect hunky-dory all the time? I recommend these two books to learn how to read critically. I also plan on reading these books because I said it's like a skill. How to Read Literature Like a Professor, Analyze Anything, A Guide to Critical Reading and Writing. To conclude, yes, we should all be reading more critically, and we should all be being honest with how we feel about the books that we read. As a reader, if I paid my hard-earned money or spent my time reading something, I am allowed to shout from the rooftop about how much I hated reading that. As a reader, you should not feel burdened to protect an author's career if you genuinely feel like a book was poor quality. You should not feel a burden of guilt about your review hurting, making or breaking an author's career. If you are going to be critical with a purpose. And unpopular opinion, you do not need to be inflammatory or unnecessarily mean to be critical or leave a negative review. Every critical review is not a critique. As an author, if you are leaving a review of my book, I assume you either purchased it or read it through Kindle Unlimited, and you already spent the money for it. So I got my royalties already. I've been paid. So I don't care what you read. Hate more books. It's good for your health. And if you are interested in receiving an advanced reader copy of one of my books, my next book, Code of Conduct, comes out on March 27th. And I am currently accepting our creator applications. So I will leave that link in the bio. To apply, all you have to do is fill out the form. And if you are accepted, then you will receive an email around March 1st, and then another one with the actual early copy of the book. And if you'd like to go ahead and pre-order it, you can pre-order it for 99 cents on the Zon. Also, I changed the cover. What do you think? Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like this video and subscribe. Subscribing to my mailing list is the best way to keep in touch with me. Thank you so much for watching and happy reading.